making web apps or whatever it is, we all would be in some capacity subjected to DPDP, right? Due to various reasons, due to the business we do. So let's understand what we need to do and like what do you have to look from a technology solution stack, from a process perspective, people management, and where organizations like Noventiq can help. What exactly is DPDP? Everything related to personal data. The government has brought in to ensure personal data is well managed, regulated, right? People have been using this without much consideration what's been done with it after the actual use, correct? So that's the whole act about. This was out 2 3 years back. It's the deadlines. I'm not getting into the repeated stuff that you've already heard. May 2027 is the last day, right? 31st of May 2027 is when the audits will start, and they'll start looking at all the all of your digital estate, how well it is aligned with DPDP. Right. So the agenda is split into 3 4 main components. I've kept this I would say an open discussion. You can unmute and speak, right? So need not wait till the end for Q&A. Of course, you can write in the chat, but feel free to just unmute, stop me, ask your questions. In this session, no question is silly. Please ask anything around the act, around people, process, or technology. It could be as simple as an IT operational, small query, or could be very much related to a regulatory aspect an auditor might ask. So please feel free, let it keep coming. Okay, we'll understand what DPDP means for your org. What does the compliance involves? What does it ask you to do? What's the path? What's the ideal path? Right? Some of you might already be there halfway, 30%, 60%. Let's understand what more needs to be done and what role technology plays in enabling you for compliance. I've been doing this for quite a while now. It's almost 12 years in this industry, 6 years in the current org itself, where I'm helping customers, improve their security posture. Majorly, my customers are, in the BFSI, ITES, and manufacturing in India and GCC. And probably I focus on the pillars of ZTNA, which you've all heard of: the identity, endpoint, security, compliance, governance. Okay. And yes, we do try to align them. Not just GDP. Before this, it was the GDPRs and other compliances. The ISO is always there. NIST is always there, right? RBI compliances already existed. So nothing new for the people who are already in the industry. But yeah, the privacy part and some more perspectives have added, right? You are more answerable to the government now. You were less earlier being an Indian company, but now you're more. And probably the kind of obligations will also shift depending on how matured you are already in your business, how distributed you are, how what kind of user base you have, and what type of apps you have, the infra you have, the kind of data you process. The obligations will change, and let's understand. Okay, but first of all, who does the bill apply to? Okay, if I put in probably business lingo, all B2B, all B2C companies, if you have a customer or supplier or any employee information with you, yes, it's applicable to you. You have to ensure that it is consented for, it is private, it is secure, and you have the tools and processes in place to manage, prevent it from leaking, prevent it from unauthorized exposure, unwanted processing, and so on, correct? So whether you are a digital company, you have a small startup, or a big established firm, it's applicable to you. You may be only in India, or you may be headquartered somewhere else, but you have business in India, subsidiaries in India. It's applicable to you. Okay. Let's understand a couple of obligations. Okay. Everyone is expected to ensure you understand your data. Data is the oil, right? Everyone knows the lingo. You have to understand data. Where is it lying? Classifying every type of data needs to be categorized in some way, classified in some way. Right? There has to be consent obtained from anyone who is sharing data. In simple scenario, if I take an example of my company, of course, I deal with customers. I help them with their infrastructure requirements or security requirements. If we are engaged in a deal, I will take your data, right? I will process it. I'll create a solution for it. You become the data fiduciary, I know, right? Because you become the data principal because you're sharing data. I become the fiduciary. I need to ensure that your consent is taken. And when I store it, it has to be classified accordingly. Any app, any application that will process your data will have to align with the DPDP requirements in terms of storage, in terms of accessibility, in terms of the the usability of that data, how it is shared cross borders, within organization, who has access to it. If I'm storing your data, does not mean my other departments get view of your data, get access to your data, right? If I'm collecting, I could be an insurance firm. If I'm collecting something from you as a customer, the other IT department does not need to see your data. They're not authorized to see your data, right? Where it is stored, you need to have complete mapping of the locations. It does not, no one will ask you every day, but at the end of the year, the auditor will ensure that the data is classified, it is located, it is mapped, it is consented. All the apps that use that data are properly mapped, right? There is a proper audit trail for the different types of data that you hold, who's accessing, from which application, and when did that happen, right? So probably for a year, you need to maintain the audit logs for all the applications, all the data that you have stored in a on-premises database, MySQL, MongoDB, or a Azure-based, SQL warehouse, an S3 bucket in Amazon, Azure Blob, any storage. It could be a Dropbox box, even if it is lying in your Slack application or Teams application, right? You have to maintain the records for a year, the audits, as well as probably a copy of the data as well. You might need it for forensics, right? And at the end of the thing, everything, you have to ensure it's not going out in unwanted territory, and people who should not be having access to it. Prevent it, right? Apply a DLP on all the channels which your company deals with. If you are allowed to send emails and share OneDrive links, communicate on Teams with customers, then those channels need to be monitored. If you're allowed to upload from a browser, then that channel needs to be monitored. If it's Firefox, Chrome, and Internet Explorer Edge browser allowed in your organization, then those browsers need to have the controls. So whatever gets uploaded, you have visibility, and eventually the power to block it as well, prevent it as well, correct? So all right, that's good. Let's break it up a bit. Okay. And also let me give an example of my own. In my case, I use an HRMS called Darwin Box. In this scenario, the Darwin Box probably is using my data, right? I'm the data principal. Now, Darwin Box is also supposed to comply to DPDP. It may be hosted somewhere in India, Europe, wherever it is. But if they are storing my data, they are forced to follow the laws. They are obligated to follow all the laws and pillars of DPDP with respect to the security, compliance, privacy, retention, lifecycle management, or any sort of access control or ZTNA solution that you can think of. Right? Most of the organizations will also need to have a data privacy officer as well to take care of all these things falling in place. Right? Usually you will probably put together a team of IT and security and legal and risk. Fine, they'll all contribute in their own domains, but in very complex environments, and if you're a big enough company, I would say more than 4 or 5,000 user base, then you probably have a very distributed hierarchy and architecture, and you have a lot of departments dealing with different types of IT requirements. In that case, you might even will have to appoint a DPO who will be in charge of aligning everything with the DPDP requirements. He'll strategize, he'll ensure things are aligned, all your current investments are aligned with DPDP, the process is aligned when dealing with data or customers or any application that is in the infra, everything is aligned with the DPDP requirements. Okay, let's understand a couple of data related obligations that every one of you will have to also consider or factor. Taking consent first, right? If you're dealing with a customer, consent is first. Before they hit OK and send, there has to be a consent agreed by them, right? How will that come? Your application that they are accessing, whether it's a browser or maybe a client app on their system, if they are sharing something with you, it could be a two-line information about their own identities, could be name, PAN card, Aadhaar card, whatever, in digital form as a snapshot, whatever. If they're sending something to you, you need to ensure consent is taken first. So your applications need to have this process in between that. So probably invoke something using an API, right? So there are solutions out in the market. If I name them, we have partnerships with Privacy APN and Privacy Shield, DPDP consultants. There are a few more in the market, security.ai and so on, which have this integration with all applications in the flow of application actually. So when someone is about to submit something, a consent can be invoked and they have to just check the boxes, read and check the boxes. I give the consent for 1 year to process by this organization. After that, and probably it has to be, the clauses have to be mentioned very appropriately, right? If you define what we are collecting, for what purpose, who will access it, and till what time it will retain. So consent will come, right? You have to define who will, and of course you have to follow the process as well. Use the consent only for the required, the actual usage. Data security solutions will follow as soon as you collect. Of course, there will be a classification, a labeling solution that will have to sit in place, whether it lands in your mailbox or any database or storage. There has to be encryption in some form. There has to be a classification tag put on it. So if you want to search for it, you get it. If at all the auditor wants to just do a random search of something that you collected, he should be able to see those classified data, right? Whether it's a minor data or someone who has retired, there should be some sort of classification, right? Whether it's confidential data or maybe it could be generic data, you have to put some sort of classifier on it. Okay? And when it comes to minor, of course, it has to be categorized in a certain way. You cannot put all data in one dump, in one S3 or blob storage and treat it as customer confidential, right? There should be some more sub classifications, right? So child, put a nomenclature or something when you're dealing with children's data, whether it's going via email or link or you're attaching something, it should reflect that you're dealing with a minor, right? You need to have solutions to clean up data, or there should be someone responsible to ensure it's searchable, it is correct, the integrity is maintained, right? And not everyone is allowed to play around with that data which is lying. So you should have process and solutions in place to maintain the accuracy of data, right? And hold it for a minimum duration of 1 year at least. Most of you will be subjected to more regulations. I would say, I'll guess NIST and ISO and RBIs would be there most of the time. So you will anyways have to store it for 3 to 7 years, right? Your HIPAA and all already force you. So yeah, by that rule, you already covered. But then it may not be applied to all the different types of data that come under DPDP. So there's the delta. You'll have to probably revisit the other compliances and see whether it's covering my DPDP boundaries. If yes, that's you're good. If not, then I have to address the delta. What happens if we don't do, the fines, right? I'm not going to put up numbers on this screen just to scare, but it starts from somewhere, couple of thousands. 10,000 is the minimum, right? And it just goes on increasing. 50 crores for some rules, then 150 crores. It could be 200 crores if you don't deal with children's data appropriately, and it can go as high as 250 crores as well if, as a large organization, I do not really fulfill the requirements of right time reporting data breach requirements and safeguarding checks are not there, then probably a 250 crore fine could be applicable to a large organization. Okay, what about processes? Okay, yeah. Notices have to be sent to the customers. Customers again could be an end user sitting at home or a B2B customer that you are doing a project or a deal or a campaign with, right? If there are changes happening with his data, they have to be notified, right? When it is stored, deleted, moved around, they have to be notified, correct? Consent has to be taken. We already spoke about this. Subject rights is more or less the same thing, but subject rights gives the user the ability to request changes in his data. You need to have that for all that, I would say for all applications that he engages with. Or, if he sent you a document, then there should be at least some process, some means for him to communicate with your company, someone in your company, and request the desired changes. My residential address might change over the next few months. If I want to intimate and make changes, that's covered in the subject rights request. And you should acknowledge that. You should make the changes and acknowledge it via digital receipt or maybe an email or something. Right? So, and probably it's not just about making changes. If I want it to be deleted, if I want it to be not used any further, whatever, there should be some form or means of, you know, communication path established that, I can just log into the browser or open the application and request some changes to be done with my data, right? And in case something happens, if a breach happens, for God's sake, in your company, my data is with you, the breach notification process has to be in place. There are guidelines to be followed, right? 72 hours is the max before which you have to notify the right authorities, probably including the stakeholder, the people whose data you're holding, right? Many cases, you will not be the only entity who is processing that data. You will pass it on to a analytics solution, you will pass it on to an HRMS, you will pass it on to your any other outsourcing agency which is building a solution. Maybe you are just a middleman and you're passing on that project details to someone else to build that solution for you, a web app, an application for you, right? So in that scenario, probably you as well and the other entity as well, both have to be compliant with DPDP. Both have to adhere to all the requirements of DPDP, whatever we just spoke until now, right? And for certain cross-border engagements, you'll have to follow the right requirement, all the laws as well. Is someone speaking? I probably heard some unmute and probably a voice came in. Did someone speak? All right.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, hello. This is Nipun from Tirupati Medicare, right?
Yes, Nipun.
Can I
Yes.
ask one question?
Please go ahead.
Yeah, you see that we were having a deep discussion along with some partners, right?
Mm,
So we are into business of B2B,
mm-hmm.
right? This is a straightforward business B2B, and also then the scope of work will remain the same with the B2C companies also B2B, or is there any difference for data privacy?
It will remain the same because you're collecting data which reflects the same types of details, right?
Okay,
It could be
okay,
financial, personal.
okay,
Yes.
okay.
In a nutshell, it's the same. Probably if
This is
I'm
the
sharing
same
you
it
any
is.
data, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You may have two different lines of business. One is dealing with B2B, one is dealing with B2C. Maybe an
Yeah,
offering
yeah,
for
but you
B2C as
see,
well.
in the B2C, there are many things comes now, like e-commerce and all these things, and B2B, this is the state business. So the capturing of the data is less in B2B.
That will depend. As I said, the kind of obligations will differ slightly because depending on how you are collecting, where you are storing for them, what type of applications come into the picture when you're dealing with B2B, B2C. So you have to, if there are a lot more processing and analysis happening in the B2B business, then all those apps will have to ensure the consent management workflow is integrated in those applications, right? and probably they are stored in a certain way. You will probably need that data to be there with you for a lot longer compared to a normal end user. Someone who's just, he may never come back to you, right? But B2B is something the company will stay, the person may go, right? So you don't really lose connects with your old customers in B2B environment, correct? Your
Okay.
B2C, you're not really worried. One will go, another comes, and they're, the probably the it's sort of it does not really stay with you for years and years, right? They
Yes,
change
yes.
over time.
This is
B2B,
the reason.
even if,
Yes.
right. So the obligations will slightly differ, but the approach of, or let's say, the kind of solutions you'll need to safeguard that sort of environment will remain the same. If you talk about specifically, if let's say if you talk about, do you need a privacy solution? Yes. Do you need classification? Yes. DLP? Yes. Data retention? Absolutely. Some components of ZTNA? Yes, they will come. So that will lie. The apps and the storages that deal with those type of data, the flow has to be integrated over there more in a detailed manner, I would rather say.
Okay, so the next question is that whether when the government of India is going to do the audit, maybe after April, after May 2027, and you see somewhere we heard that it is a that we have to get finished DPDP Act maybe around 40%
November,
or 60%
by November.
till
Yes.
September or October for this, like consent management, something like that.
They are in fact, they also announced a couple of times that they'll want to fast track or just prepone the dates to by some weeks and months as well. But I don't really see that happening for now. It's good news that we still have time till at least 2027 until penalties are applicable. They might check and they might, I'm not sure how you will benefit if you do it early. At least the penalties don't start, to really be applicable until end of May 2027. That's for
Okay,
sure.
right.
Right now, I don't have any other concrete announcement from the government which says there's a penalty if you don't have things in place in mid of Feb. No, that's not going to happen
Okay,
very clearly.
right. Got your point. Thank you very
Because
much, Mr. Sir.
and
Yeah.
the reason for that is they've also understood the process is not very smooth and short for almost 95% of the organizations. It's a lengthy process. Not, I would say, what I've seen so far, neither of the organizations had privacy workflow in place. They had the other security stack in place, but not the privacy part. So getting aligned and assessed, and probably you'll just like you go for a medical prescription for a big you know disease, a lot of recommendations come in, two three different doctors come in, so you'll do the same thing unless you are satisfied with the approach and solutioning, and the capability of the partner as well as the OEM to really go the distance. You will not put in that much money because then backing out is not really a choice in between, right? It's too much of a chaos.
Okay. And
So
secondly, one more question, Mr. Ansari, if you don't mind. This is
mhm,
related with the appointment of the DPO,
yes.
right? So DPO responsibility, whether he should be, this is a very basic question, you see, that what we try to find out. DPO is the person or that he is from the company itself. But is it a responsibility for the legal department to have a DPO or IT?
Mm, I do not really say IT. IT
Right,
will, a DPO will never be from an IT. He will be
right,
from
right.
right, a legal and risk department only, mostly,
Mostly
because
legal understanding.
yes, because he's not really configuring it. He's aligning the requirements and mapping it to the current investments that they have and future investments.
Right, right. Absolutely right. The same
And
thing, what we think also. Right.
see, to be put it in more, I would say, to make it more simple for people to look at a DPO, it's not necessarily that everyone will hire or really look for an external DPO, right? They
No, no,
will
it's not
probably
required.
assign,
Yes, yes, yes.
yes,
So
someone
the
from your org
registered
can take
duty
up
has to
that
be
role.
assigned. Right, right.
But I've
Absolutely
seen,
right.
to be also to just let you know, I've seen one org where, I mean, recently we connected, they had an appointed DPO as well. Probably I have my colleague and mentor as well on the call, Peter. If you want to throw some light on the DPO discussions that you've done, recently.
Yeah, sure.
Peter,
Hi.
yeah.
Hi. Yeah. Hi, everybody. So the point is, one thing I want to say is to start off, when you spoke about a B2B company versus a B2C company, you're absolutely right. See, Amin is right that the scope remains the same in sense of the various processes you have to put in place. But on the whole, it will be a lot less onerous, little less of a hassle, because the total number of entities you are having, that will be much lesser. Like if you talk to a HDFC bank or somebody, they will have lakhs or crores of people. So the systems that will be required to cater to that volume will be much of a different scale. Whereas the B2B company with 100 or 500 or 1,000 or 2,000 entities are storing data for, it will be a lot easier. So yes, for a B2C, it is generally going to be easier to comply than for a B2C in terms of complexity, in terms of cost, in terms of time required. The second question about the DPO. See, it actually depends on the organization. So I have seen companies who appoint a separate DPO, a separate person, typically from the risk or the compliance side. Sometimes I've seen that somebody from the CISO team itself, one person is nominated as the DPO. In a small company, the CISO himself could take on the DPO role. So it all depends
CISO
on.
and DPO, from IT perspective, that we are not responsible risk and this GRC governance and all these things. So the IT is only facilitator.
Yeah,
So
so it actually depends on your org. If you have a separate risk team, separate compliance team, then they would have. If you have a separate legal team, they would give somebody. Or if a smaller company just got an IT function, then somebody from there has to carry the ball.
Okay, sir. Got your point. Thank you.
But it is not. It doesn't. The first important thing to understand is that it's not mandatory for you to have a DPO. Only if your company is designated as a significant data fiduciary, and that still hasn't happened yet, then you are mandated to have a DPO. Otherwise, you don't have to have a DPO. I mean, it's nice to have, but you don't need to have it by law.
All right.
Eamon, please carry on.
Yep. Every probably company that will hold data will be a data fiduciary, but the large ones who collect data in, I would say, who have billions of files and they deal with millions and billions of customers, they'll fall under this category. Though, as Peter said, the government has not announced it yet. I'm expecting the likes of LICs and SBIs to fall under this category along with some major organizations. And if you are one of them, probably, the Googles and Microsoft probably will also fall under them. But if you are one of them, you'll have to have a separate DPO, an appointed DPO, not separate, I would say at least. You have to have a privacy audit done exclusively for the privacy part and an impact assessment as well in your organization. And this is not your generic security or red teaming that you do every year, but this is focus on the privacy part. All right, since it's not yet announced and no one really knows that they are an SDF, so let's not really get into it. We'll probably know about this in the coming, I would say, after a quarter or two. All right. What can we do and how we've been approached?
Eamon, before you jump into this, I want to address a couple of questions which I've seen on the chat.
Okay.
The first question is that, from Mr. Gautam, it says that as in GDPR, it is clearly defined what does PII mean and what category of data is sensitive. Could you clearly define PII for DPDP? Here's the funny thing, the PII is not exactly clearly defined in the DPDP Act. Okay. All it says is that any data which is relatable to an individual or which can be related back to an individual is PII. So that's the kind of definition it gives. So basically what it means is even if you have the name and an email ID of a person, that is also PII. Name, email ID, cell phone is also PII. So that is why, when we talk about B2B companies, though B2B companies don't have end customers, they'll be dealing with companies. And in that company, there'll be some person's phone, some person's email ID, some person, the authorized signatory or whoever you are. So something will be there. So that is the basic fundamental thing. So in PII, the simple way to understand PII is that anything that can be related back to the person. That by looking at that data, you can say it belongs to this person. There's some relationship between that data and that person. That is PII. And the second question I saw was from, I think, Manish Kumar. It says that for B2B company will DPDP. Yeah, so that we have covered. Yes, it will apply. But like I said, the scope in terms of volume and in terms of complexity will be a lot less. But all the items, like Eamon said, would still apply. And the last question is, I see from Mr. Gautam is, can CISO become DPO? Yes, if the CISO is able to carry the load, surely he can become DPO. So the function of the DPO is basically to ensure that the company implements the act, it's in compliance with the act, to put together the policies, the processes, the procedures, the controls, the governance, the reporting, all those things. So if the CISO can take the load, then sure. Okay. And I see one more question from Mr. Gautam, about the consent manager. So, well, there's two ways of doing it. First of all, it's not compulsory to go for an external consent management service. You can do it on your own. So most companies, especially smaller companies, would probably do it on their own. But because there may be a company who's too small who can't do it, or the companies who are very large who can't do it, uh, they might decide to go in for a service. So the government has said that certain companies can apply, and a few companies have already applied to become a consent manager. The government has given all the criterion. So once these companies applied and they're registered as consent manager, then they can start offering consent management services. So that's how it works. But as of now, nobody is yet notified. So for most companies, the thing is to get a consent management platform and operate it on their own. So until the government notifies somebody, then you can go ahead and take their services. So we don't know in what shape and form it will come, but as and when it comes. But right now, most companies I'm working with, they are setting up, their own systems. It could be on premise, it could be on the private cloud or whatever, but they'll have to own it and manage it on their own. Sorry, Aman, you can go ahead.
Absolutely right. Just to further that, and I've read a couple of large conglomerates they've started the process. The government hasn't named them, but yeah, they will be called government empaneled consent managers, and they said they'll be announced soon, which I'm expecting before October or November. So you'll hear a couple of neutral companies, probably on a neutral platform, they'll help you with the consent management part.
Yeah. So the whole idea is the consent management is consent manager is a person who is responsible for collecting the consent, providing the notice, collecting the consent, storing the consent, making the consent available to any application who wants, and then also making the consent, making the whole database available to the individual customer, so he can query that system. He can ask, what is the data you have of mine? What consent do you have? I want to change the consent. I want to withdraw the consent. I want to change my email ID or phone number. So there has to be a system to handle all this. So the consent management platform is a system that handles it, and the consent manager is the person who's going to take care of that system. Sorry, Aman, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, you always start with assessment, right? We've been doing this, probably currently we engaged with somewhere around 8 customers, what I see in the last month and a half. And people are now actually, towards that phase, okay, let's move ahead. So assessment is sort of already done mostly, by 1 or 2, 3 different organizations. And I've seen most of the orgs now pretty confident on, at least the assessment phase, and they're ready to take action for the next, which is looking out for the vendors and the privacy management solutions and how it will integrate in their current application stack and the database stack where it's stored, and all the analysis is done. So it's already happening. If you have not started yet, please do so. Even if you can do it in your own capacity, then you can look out probably for partners like us, who can fill up that gap or something as you really, uh, you don't understand, or there's, further work done in term, complexity increases as you go on, right? So then probably you can reach out to us. Okay, but that's a flow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The fifth one, I want to just touch base, the advanced data management. The last, when everything is probably, you've classified, you've dealt with the protection policies and everything, data is mapped and stored and consent is taken. There still is something to be done with the data, right? We hand it over to someone. We don't dispose it every time, correct? Because nothing is waste, right? Everything sells. Sometimes for research, sometimes by different companies for marketing, sometimes for your, maybe future, you just want to filter out and clean up something, but it's processed by something, by some application, by some organization, where this is where you will need a different type of solution which helps you to pseudonymize or anonymize the data. In simple terms, redact something so that it's not processed against the DPDP regulations, right? So if something is to be forwarded to an analysis company or a credit rating company or something, or maybe your own research company which you just started, it has to be the same information cannot be passed on as it is. It has to be anonymized. Some information has to be redacted. So that has to be taken care of as well. If you're not doing anything, fine, you don't need anything. You're disposing data, good. But if you are not, then you need different solutions as well. All right, let's break it up. Okay. Depending on how spread your infra is, your Windows, Mac servers, your databases where you store data on-prem, cloud, physical, virtual, and different SaaS apps that you have. It could be hosted, it could be a SaaS, whatever. Everything has to be assessed with respect to all the pillars of ZTNA, with respect to how they will receive and store data and process data. Their capabilities have to be checked, whether they're capable to store within that app or they're passing it on to a DB. Is there classification happening at the DB, on the system, in the application? Everything has to be assessed. Something's not there, you either accept it as a business risk or you address it, right? Your endpoints not upgraded, that's a different thing. You have to upgrade it, right? Unmanaged, then there's a problem. Your solution, there has to be foundational things already in place, like, right? So couple of things you'll have to, maybe, it may not really be a DPDP thing, but the foundations have to be also be there in place, right? You need to have a managed system, you need to have your users and identities managed. Then comes the other things. Of course, the stack, what the DPDP has already spoken about, the the DLPs and classifications and retention solutions, access management, and couple of, some place firewalls, those will come in. But the foundations have to be set right, right? I cannot, you cannot just secure your database and have your systems, you know, accessed by everyone from anywhere, and people using personal devices. Those are unspoken. I mean, that goes without saying that, foundations have to be set right for the zero trust first, and then you build on that. If that's not there, a serious reason to be concerned. Please start today itself. Don't even wait for November or May. But yes, let us assess. We're already doing this for many organizations. Probably if someone needs a sample report, what we've done, what we have identified, and we can share that as well as a sample also. Okay, of course, it starts with an assessment, a workshop, as simple as an Excel sheet, or maybe whatever you want to use. We'll have to put it on paper, right? Everything, your apps, your infra databases, your storages, bifurcate different clouds, on-prem or hosted apps, on-prem apps, virtual, physical, whatever. It has to be very in white and black. There cannot be a gray area in when we document anything, right? What controls they offer, are they covered by DPDP or not? If not, there's a gap. We'll have to address it by some solution, right? So we review all the policies. What applications and processes will invoke a consent? So the consent requirements will have to be addressed there. All your apps probably which deal with customer data will have to, probably integrate the consent management in it. Post that, there will be an impact assessment as well. So after you deploy, before you deploy, probably what's the difference after you apply? Is there any impact, a positive, negative, that gets there? Data minimize, probably anonymization, minimization required, I just spoke about. If your organization requires it, maybe a branch requires it, maybe a certain department requires it, not all. So we deal with that accordingly. And what the roadmap looks like, let's say, of course, not everything can be, we can phase it out, right? Not everything will be done in a day. So we have to prioritize, right? Different teams, different domains. Maybe you want to address the privacy, the integration with consent management first, subject rights first with your applications, then followed by the actual data protection stack that you want to complete if you don't have it already. So that roadmap can be defined. Okay, framework will probably align to all the verticals of DPDP, your discovery, classification, policies. Now, policies will be split across many things, right? Your control requirements and policies will be split across your access management, mobile device management, application management, threat protection, security, compliance, governance, every pillar of ZTNA that you can think of, and any risk associated to that, which is the TPO, third-party risk management, right? You do your red teamings and vulnerability assessments, right? It's all part of that. There has to be a governance structure also defined along the way, which probably is somewhat already in place. with the additions of how the how the DPO reportings will be, how the hierarchy will report to DPDP, who will he report to, right? If you are SDF, a significant data fiduciary, it could be something different. Maybe a more, more teams reporting to a DPO, or maybe DPO reports to more people because it's very complex now. So things will change a bit. Okay. We already discussed this. Let's not go into this some more. Do not have who are the significant data fiduciaries yet, so it's not really a concern at the moment, I would say. Yeah. Just putting on screen what I just spoke. Different categories, the stack of data protection solutions that you will need. If you don't have it, look into it. If your existing investments can cover it, good. If there are additional licenses, go for it. Start trialing it. If we can help, please reach out to us, me, Peter, anyone. If you have any email from Noventiq, please reach out, right? But make sure your identity access management is taken care of. When I say that, this is covering agents also in today's world. It's not just the human identities. Your service principles, those have already been there, right? But agentic AI and all have come in recently. We'll all have some capacity. We have agents sitting in our environment. If they are not managed, there's a problem, and that's the first thing auditors are going to come in, because everyone just onboarded agents. No one really cared about safeguarding of the environment for the agents. So they're going to probably look at it from a very, I would say, granular lens. They know we've been dealing with DLPs and all from 2007 and 8, but yeah, but agents and all, no one really cared about whether it's the visibility and governance and security is all there in terms of agentic, and what access the agents have. Are there explicit permissions given? Are they over permissioned in some capacity? So the agents are what they're going to come for. So please be aware. Data discovery, classification, DLPs, rights management, important. People sometimes have classification but not rights management. There will be a problem. People think, I just put a tag as confidential or internal and send my email. No, it's not sufficient. You have to have the encryption, the access rights, the expiry dates, watermarking, things which cover under the document rights management to be there for your emails and files, right? Whatever your database is, what you use. Lifecycle management will apply not only on your mailboxes and files in OneDrive, your SharePoint sites, externally shared SharePoint sites, your Teams conversations, other applications, your databases, cloud databases, everything wherever you are storing that data will have to have at least minimum 1 year of retention, and maybe assigned a disposition as well. It's not about just storing forever. Probably you'll have to dispose it at the right time. So there needs to be a data lifecycle management solution in place. There needs to be someone who is responsible for disposing that data at the right time.
Eamon, just to add here, the DPDP Act says that you have to store for a minimum of 1 year, like you said, but also if for a period of 3 years the data principal hasn't contacted you for anything which requires the use of the data, then after 3 years you have to send a notice to the guy, 48 hours notice, and then delete the data. Of course, if there is any other statutory law, which like a SEBI or IRDA or RBI, which says you have to store it for longer, or there's a legal hold or a case going on, that's a different matter. But otherwise, if there is no other requirement to hold, no other legal requirement to keep the data, after 3 years, you have to delete it. So after giving notice. So, but the point is, then how do you know, that this data, so you have to have some system which monitors the age of the data and says, okay, this hasn't been touched for 3 years. Yes. Therefore, it is liable for deletion. Therefore, let's send a notice out and then let's delete it. So that system, so that life cycle management system is what is required.
Yes. You'll also have to log it, monitor it. Most of you use an SIM solution. If you don't, look at solutions like syslog or something. You'll have to have solutions in place to log and monitor as well. You should be able to query data if something comes up. Right? Backup, we've all done backup. On-prem servers, endpoints, applications, everything needs to be backed up and should be recoverable at the point of time needed. Right? Threat protection is your EDR, your email security, your firewalls. If someone is having free access to your servers, there's a problem. You need to have your NGFWs in place. You need to have your email communications secured. You need to have your laptop secured, your mobile secured. Wherever you're accessing that data, that needs to be secured. The access and the device itself. Right? And validating. You'll
Correct.
have to map it against all the pointers, the
Yes.
recommendations that are in the DPDP. Yes, there was a question. Someone saying something? All right. Okay. I think we spoke. I'll just touch base again, focusing on purely the data privacy part, the notice management. Again, see, I've repeatedly actually put this, from different angles. This is the piece which is really not clear to many, what I've seen so far. People have not even started integrating the consent management workflows in their apps. They're still confused whether it's an API or whether it's a code change that I have to do, whether I have to rebuild the application or what. So take a moment and talk to your app team and ask them about this. If this is to be done, what are the possibilities? Is my application modern enough to support these, or I have to revamp the entire, or maybe I have to take it from on-prem and load it up, shift it to Azure or something to leverage the cloud possibilities. Think about it. You can talk to organizations in the OEM itself or service providers like us. We've done it for customers. We've modernized apps also and all. So please have a look at it. This is going to take the most time because it's an uncharted territory. But again, the lingos are pretty much known. We've heard all these terms: masking, ROPA, grievance management. It falls under the privacy management. Okay, I try to just give a glimpse of the mapping. So again, if I did to bucketize the solutions and list down the solutions, probably places where Noventiq can help you to drive it without solution is where there's a service, right? A discovery service, a red teaming, a vulnerability assessment, pen testing from different perspectives, a DPO service or a compliance audits, impact assessment. That's where we can help, without really depending on any solution which is there in place or not. But other things you'll have to have it. The clauses are mentioned. I did not put the OEMs. There are too many OEMs at the moment, right? We have partnerships with many of them. If I just name a few, in the data security space, you have your Microsoft Zscalers, Forcepoints, Seclor, Archon, and so on, which deals with all those retention, lifecycle, data security, proxies, and secure web gateways, right? All those. So again, that's an open thing as of now. Probably you might already have an investment or not, and probably we'll have to look at how it complements and coexists. So let's not name OEMs. I just want to put, you have to have these things in place. If not, then please talk to us or talk to your team and get it aligned. Okay, a very I would say a neutral approach. If it's a mid-segment organization, few thousand users, you're going to take a couple of quarters. It's not going to happen in one quarter. It's going to take. But this is a very I would say a humble approach, optimistic approach. We can do it in 6 to 7, 5 to 6, 7 months also if it's a small org, probably in the range of a few hundred users up to 1,000 users, still doable in 3 4 months, because assessment, designing, integrations, implementing some controls, then operationalizing and stabilizing everything, documentation, training the team to manage and everything takes somewhat couple of months. Nobody can do it in 2 3 weeks and 2 months. It's not doable. If that's the case, it's just a pure play deployment. It's not a proper consultation. But again, I believe if you're already through the first phase, you've done half the job. Please talk to more. Look at the partnership capabilities that we hold, the OEMs that you're looking at. Let's discuss on a couple of things how we can take it to the next phase. Again, uh, Peter already spoke. Probably he did not really introduce himself, but yeah, he's a veteran in this field. He's written a couple of books, more recently on the DPDP. Right, so he's a mentor and fortunately my colleague as well. So please go through this. You can scan it as well, probably to get know more about DPDP. It's a published book, and probably you can get a hard copy as well. So go through it. Probably it's very up on the point. It talks about DPDP. Probably just our normal a user might want to just read as probably a story, go on, and you can finish it in probably 2 days itself. You don't need a week or 2 weeks to finish it. It's very up to the point and very on the topic, the trend that's going on, the lingos that you're hearing every day. It's all well captured over there.
Just want to add here that the book is available on Amazon, but if you don't have to buy it, if you scan the QR code, there's an audio version of it, which is like a kind of a podcast of two people discussing DPDP. It's 24 minutes long. So you can just scan the QR code and download the MP3 file from there. Or if you're a person who prefers a hard copy, then the hard copy is available on Amazon.
Awesome.
But the idea is not, the idea is to make the information available and accessible. That's it. Yeah. Please carry on.
Yeah, please read as much as you can. Right, probably that's all. That's all for today. I just